Hi y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarah. If you're new here, I'm pretty decidedly anti-niche. I make all kinds of content. You can tell by my handle. I just do things. I'm a whole person. But I thought today, if you've seen some of my other content, you know I'm very goal-oriented. I'm very, forward momentum driven. I am a very operations focused human. So in light of that, I don't know about you, but I have a whole bunch of reset and New Year's and how I'm gonna make 2024 my best year ever and all that kind of stuff. So I thought I'd throw my hat in that ring and just kind of talk you through the 2024 that I have on deck. I don't anticipate telling you all of my goals because I literally have 80 of them, but I do want to show you. This is not a planner video. I have a 2024 planner lineup. If you do want to see that, I'll link it. But this is what 2024 looks like. And actually, this is what 2024 looks like. But yeah, so obviously not going into every single one of these things, but I do want to kind of talk through what's going to be different for me in 2024. Again, if you're new here, I have a ton of content that kind of explain what 2023 was for me. It was brutal. End of 2022 was incredibly devastating. So 2023 was a year where I would say my word of the year last year was tending, because I was just so shattered. And I think for 2024, the two words that I kind of have picked are intention and discernment. So that being said, everything that I'm doing for 2024 is being done with that in mind. Everything is being done through that lens. So I want to be much more intentional. I want to work on things that fill my cup up, that make me feel great. I don't know a better way of saying this, but I'm not really interested in the performative aspects of I have my shit together, right? It's this is what matters to me. This is what fills my cup up. This is what I want to put my effort into. This is a passion of mine, whatever it might be. I just want to prioritize delight. So I want to be really intentional with my time, money, energy. I know what kind of person I am. So I want to be intentional with the people that I pour into. I also, and the interests and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of floods into a bunch of things. So that being said, discernment kind of comes in because you make a choice, right? You're choosing something, and they kind of co-pilot a lot for me this year. That's kind of the direction I'm heading in. But I wanted to speak to some high level sort of pillars that I'm focusing on this year. Again, we're not getting into every single goal of mine, but I do want to speak to pillars. And the reason why I show the planners is because I have a planner for basically every pillar of my life. This is family. This is reading. Reading is one of my biggest hobbies, so I wanted a dedicated, it's just a booklet. These are all from Sterling Ink, in case you're curious, but I track everything. So I'll have videos throughout the year. And this is something that I really want to do. I want to do monthly sort of check-ins, resets, but I want to do it with the intention and the discernment co-piloting, right? So here's what worked, here's what didn't, here's the goals are going to change, and here's why, here's what I've noticed about this, that kind of stuff. So for me specifically, I am somebody who needs to feel forward momentum. I need to feel like I'm making headway. I need to make progress. It is my most favorite thing in the world. And when I tell you how much I am, my number one pet peeve in life is treading water. I cannot stand it. So I need to know that every day something is moving. That's just a requirement for how I am. So this might seem like a lot to you. In fairness, it is a lot. This is excessive. Even for me, this is excessive. But it's something that I feel like I really need this year because it gets everything out of my head, gives it a designated place to go, and I can track, I can see the progress, right? It's very, very visual. Okay, so the sort of pillars I've got hobby pillars. I've got reading, I've got gardening in here somewhere. I've got some home things I want to get done. I'll give you some ideas of what my reading goals are, because I have 6 reading goals for the year. And then what I tend to do is I have these big goals for the year, and then I chunk them out for the month. So for example, I want to read 100 books in 2024. I'm going to read 10 in January. I want to read 5 classics. I'll read 1 in January. I want to read 25 to 30 nonfiction. I'll read 2 to 3 in January. Other ones, I want to get a library card. I can do that in January. I want to borrow some books from the library. I didn't put that on my January. And I want to read a series, fiction or nonfiction. Didn't put that on January either. But one of the things that I like about having these pull apart things is it helps me just have a dedicated spot to where things can live, and it doesn't get, I said this in a video one of my planner videos or whatever it was in 2023, I said like the thing that I noticed that was really becoming very bothersome was something would go wrong and it just kind of threw everything with it. Like you couldn't really pull the baby from the bathwater. I love the idea of this. That way I can plug it into other things as I want to. So for example, I have like tracking things that I want to do. I have a 5-year diary. I got this for the first time. I have 2 of them. One is for health. So everything from medications to symptoms to if I'm in physical therapy for anything, if I'm fasting, I track my fasting, all that stuff. And I like this because when I'm having a health issue, God forbid it gets worse or, you know, insert whatever, I have a living document where I can be like, hey, you know, August 13th, 5 years worth of August 13th. And I just think that's so helpful from a health perspective, especially if you're like, for me, I'm in perimenopause. So being able to track like hormones or whatever symptoms, really, really helpful. So that's something that I'm plugging in for this year. So I have a lot more, I'm very data driven. So I have a lot more data. I have like daily check-ins with myself that make me feel like I'm moving needles that are 3 seconds to move, you know, just update. How often what did you fast today? What'd you weigh in at today? What was your aura score today? Stuff like that, you know? Those are just helpful little, if you're doing like a medical, like a clinical trial, like N of 1, if you're just doing like a one-off study, it's N of 1 data. So I also have a work planner. So I've got some work goals that I'm not gonna go into. I have content planner. I have a ton of content goals, but that's another one I'm not really gonna go into. I have my me planner. This is just like myself. And I'll tell you some of my goals for myself. And these are not like SMART goals. These are not like measured, track, like whatever. Some of them kind of are. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3, I've got 6. I've got 6 of everything. Daily core habit tracking, which is, again, N of 1, the data, having that, all that stuff. And I actually have in this planner, I've got like 9 things that I track every day. Oh, I need to do that. And that I track every day. And then I have like a priorities thing that I can actually pull in and be like, okay, what do I want to focus on for this quarter? So for 2024, I want to do daily core habit tracking, weekly self dates that pursue my passions, therapy, prioritize myself in my future, build a life that makes me truly happy, and develop routines that incorporate my passions and my responsibilities. So that sounds generic as shit. So it's one of those things where this is when I intention discernment, right? So when I was making my goals, I want to not necessarily go, what do I want to have, acquire, whatever. It's what do I want it to feel like? I drive my dream car. I've accomplished enough in my life with material goods that I know tangibly what it feels like. What do I want it to actually every day feel like? How do I do that? What are those actual actions like? What do they look like? So for example, therapy. I have never done therapy for a long, long period of time. I'm committing to a full year. I'd like to do it for a lot longer, but for 2024, with the amount of grief and trauma that I have around different things, I think it's high time. And again, this is not the point of this video, but just for a really vulnerable example, it's high time that I start. There's this great Bill Burr bit when he talks about he had a son. He has a daughter and he has a son. And he said, when I had my son, so he started doing therapy when he had his daughter. And then when he had his son, he realized that the mountain that he thought was 6 feet is really 12. It was like mountain of shit. And I was like, oh, I so feel that way. And so I think I owe it to myself, you know, but that feeds into building a life that makes me truly happy. So what does that look like for me now? What does truly happy look like for current Sarah? Not 25-year-old, not 30-year-old. What does this version of Sarah look like? You know what I mean? And then how do I develop routines that incorporate those passions and my responsibilities? So work, life, different things like that, right? I mean, there's a ton of stuff on here. For example, one of my goals, and I'll actually get into, one of the things I did was I made day 1 of January in my me planner. I took all of my goals, habits, and intentions for the month and I put them in like a line. So I have like 40. A bunch of them are reading. I've gone through those. One was learn how to make dog food and successfully make dog food. So yesterday was the first day that I successfully made dog food. I'm like super proud of that. That was a big goal of mine. I have a lot, I love to cook. It's my favorite thing in the world. I am such a nerd when it comes to food, sourcing, nutrition, sustainability, all that kind of stuff. It is my favorite thing. I was looking at kind of just the landscape of my life and I was like, God, why don't I make dog food? And it is, I gotta admit, like it is not a part. Like it's not like a small task. It's like a ton of research. Sourcing is a thing that I'm kind of going through right now. So that's a journey, but it's something that I think in hindsight, it's not dissimilar from making sourdough. I make sourdough every single week. I've kept a starter for years. You just fold it into the mix, right? But you've got to start somewhere. So for me, I'm starting now. I also want to resuscitate my baking challenge that I do every month with my friend Beth, who lives in England. We have a permanent long distance friendship, and it's one of the bids for connection that we have with each other. Every month for years now, we've baked the same thing. She takes odd months, I take even, we pick, and then we both make the same thing. So we have taken maybe the last 6+ months off, I wanna say 6 months off, and we're bringing it back for 2024. So that's awesome because one, it's a bid for a friend, right? It's a way to connect with your friend. Two, I love to bake and cook. It's like, I am my most at home when I'm in the kitchen. It is my favorite thing. It is my favorite way to be productive is in the kitchen. It's like a threefer, you know? It's such a nice way to spend my time. It's a great way to connect with my friend who's 6 hours ahead of me on a different continent. And it's also something that I am developing a skill set. Talked about therapy. I want to get into some other kind of practices like tarot, Chani. I do my morning pages. I have daily habits like that. Another daily habit I have is 50 squats a day. Every day, 50 squats. I do it for multiple reasons. One, I want to have a nice ass. But two, my back is terrible. So it's a way to develop an alternative power source. So if you engage your core, but if your back is bad, if your back's really having a day, you can't really use your core. Like to pull in your core naturally engages your back. And if you can't do that day, like for example, me sometimes, it's a bad move. So developing my kind of glute muscles, wrapping that around and kind of coming up a little bit, that's actually a great power source for me. So that's one of the reasons why I do it. I guess some other stuff with content that I've got a gardening goal of keeping my citrus trees alive during the winter. I live in Texas, so that's not impossible, but it is something I have to pay attention to. I've got some work goals and then some tracking goals, some money goals. I have that separate too. Let's talk about though the intention and the discernment and kind of how they fly into everything. So for example, one of my goals with money is to wait a minimum of 24 hours before making a purchase, unless it's like an absolute emergency. Just so we're clear, today's January 7th. So I am a week into the new year and I have noticed, especially in like the Amazon Prime convenience culture era that we're in, where it's like everything can be at your house in 2 days or less, waiting, is so nice. And just like, do I need it? Can I wait? Can I make that money go elsewhere? The other thing I think too, and this is huge for me this year, shopping local. So do I have to buy it there? Can I get it somewhere else? So for example, with reading, and this is why I'm saying like I'm not really going into every single goal because they kind of all talk to each other in some way, shape, or form. With reading, I had a goal to not buy any books this month. That's not necessarily like a frugality exercise. It's more of a intentional exercise. And it's because I have a ton of books that I already own in person, like physically own a copy of, that I haven't read yet. So it's getting through those. I have a Kindle now. I got a Kindle for Christmas. I have Kindle Unlimited. I've got a ton of books on that. It's just being more intentional. It's being discerning with your time, right? It's being discerning with your dollar. It's being discerning with everything. So it's an exercise for that. I also like the weekly self dates. I don't need to take myself out. What I could do is I can easily make myself a cappuccino. I can easily spend the afternoon reading. That for me is luxury. Like if I can take 2 to 3 hours and just sit in my bed and read a book and drink a coffee with my pups, I don't get to do that very often. I have a ton of irons in the fire. So to consciously make an intentional choice to do that feels so great. To have that kind of deposit in that account of me feels so great. So just, this is what I'm choosing to do. This is the point behind it. And then there's this sort of domino effect of things that come after that, right? So shopping local, I want to keep the money. I want to keep my money in my economy, like my local community economy. I want to support more like local businesses, small businesses. I'd also like to support women-owned businesses as much as possible. That's a big deal for me across the board with everything anyway. But I do notice like I could be a lot better about, yesterday is actually a really good example. I went into a liquor, I'm doing dry January. It's actually on my January goals habit that's on this. So I went into a liquor store yesterday because I'm gonna go see my friend later, and we're both doing dry January, so I got mocktails. And I was like laughing because I'm like, where do you go to get mocktails? You go to the liquor store. But it was still the thing of like, oh, what liquor store can I go to? Can I go to one that's local? Can I go to one that's not like some big, chain? And I did. I was out in that neighborhood anyway. I stopped, I found one, had great reviews, and they've got like, she was super helpful. It was great. And it was just that little bid. It was just that little like conscious choice that you make of, do I have to go to some thing that you can get anywhere? Or can I go somewhere that keeps the money in the local economy or keeps more money in the local economy, right? So stuff like that. So that's my big thing for January. I want to do, again, I'm going to do these every month. I'm going to do like, how did I land? When I do my February reset, I'll blur out some of the stuff like money or anything that kind of is a privacy thing. You know what I mean? Like, obviously I'm not going to disclose all of the stuff, but I will talk you through. I have like 40, I think I have 41 or 42 goals for January. So just like nobody really cares about, some of this stuff is just to hold me accountable. Those I'll leave out, but they do matter to me. So I will be like, high level, here's where I landed on my content goals, or high level, here's where I landed on my money goals. That's sort of my approach, but also intention discernment. So at the end of the month, reflecting back and being like, did that matter to me? Did that just feel stressful? Did it feel like a foot on my neck? How did I feel about that? Because that bumps into other goals, right? Like that's time, that's money, that's effort, that's whatever being taken from something to go here. So can that be spent better? So you kind of see there's an overarching lens through which I'm viewing everything. And then I also am really trying to prioritize, I would say I have 3 main hobbies: reading, gardening, and cooking. Anything that can keep me doing those 3 things, I want to do that. So that's important to me. And I will always have goals that support those 3 hobbies, because that way it feels like time well spent and it doesn't feel like I'm taking time away from something else. It also feels like I'm prioritizing myself in a way that feels really tangible and I'll notice, you know what I mean? So yeah, so anyway, that's what's up for 2024. I have to tell you, I'm really excited to see what I have on deck for this year. This year's gonna have a ton of change in it. It's gonna be I'm calling it my revival era, just because I was in such a state last year that being able to, I'm not saying I'm out of grief at all. Like I'm nowhere near being out of grief, but I'm starting to like get oxygen back in my lungs, if that makes sense. Like I'm starting to like inhabit my body again in a way that feels more active than it did last year. Whereas last year I was just like getting through my day and I was trying to put one foot in front of the other as much as possible. This year is like, okay, you've survived. Now where do you want to go? Where do you want the ship to go? Here's where we are. Here's where we want to be. So then it's like, where are you? Where do you want to be? Once you have those answered, how do we want to get there? Right? So that's kind of like, realistically in 12 months time, what do you want to have in any capacity, right? How much do you want to have saved? How much do you want to have invested? How much do you want to have whatever? Where do you want to, I don't want to prioritize travel this year. That's not a goal of mine at all this year. 2024 is the year, I don't have a single trip planned. Well, that's not true. I think I'm going to see my dad. I think I'll go visit my dad at some point in the year. But aside from that, I have no travel planned. And normally I would be like down. Not this year. This year I've got other goals and it's that thing. But I'm also, a year is a long time. So let's see what this looks like every month. So I'm personally very excited to check in on myself, to kind of show you and myself, like, hey man, this is what, how much changed in a month. Here's where this went off the rails, or here's where and also to kind of catch myself, like, oh, you're slacking off on this, or, oh, this is becoming a much bigger time suck than you'd anticipated. I've got a bunch of career goals this year. Some of them I can already tell, I'm like, the amount of time it would take to do them is definitely going to erode time spent with hobbies, so like, reading 100 books. I have 10 for January. I also have to take a career course this month. I also have some other things. So it's just that there are 24 hours in a day. And you know how they always say like, well, Beyonce has the same, yeah, she also has staff. I don't. So being able to really reckon with how much time things truly take, what I need for respite, what I need for motivation, all that kind of stuff, that's all stuff we're gonna learn along the way. But I think that's also why I wanted to do this video now and not, you know, in that kind of limbo phase last week of December, because I feel like once you've started the year, you either don't do it at all or you like gung-ho. And I wanted to wait a minute and just like take a beat and start strong, but also like, if there's one thing I've been taught through this whole journey of mine, it's not gonna go according to plan. You know, so you can have all the goals in the world and then life's gonna throw you all the curveballs in the world. So just being able to check in and be like, yeah, that didn't happen, or actually this happened instead, or whatever, critical. That perspective of A, being present, and B, being able to iterate in a way that doesn't feel like you're talking yourself into a decision you didn't want to make, or like, ugh, I don't like that option, but I guess I have to make do with it. No, just being very present and discerning and, okay, what do I want? Why do I want it? What's the point behind that? What am I gonna have to give up in order to achieve that? What am I gonna have to say goodbye to? What do I wish I could say goodbye to? All of those questions kind of are deciding some of these moves for me. So yeah. Anyway, that's what's up for January. That's my sort of take on a reset this year. These will be pretty frequent videos, at least monthly. I feel like I wanna check in a lot on this. I also might do some shorts on them too, just sort of like how we're doing on monthly goals and that kind of stuff. But yeah, so if you're interested in this, let me know. Let me know what your goals, resolutions, what your word of the year is if you do that, all that kind of stuff. I wanna know what you're excited for in the year. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you all very soon. Bye.